welcome to this very special conversation. I'm Ridhima Bhatnagar. Made in Heaven Season 2 recently dropped on the OTT platform. While most of the viewers have really appreciated the storytelling and the performance of characters, there is now new controversy that is now being seen as far as claims that have been made by writer Yashica Dutt. She, in fact, has gone on to say, while on one hand she has appreciated the storytelling, it is one particular episode that seems to have become a little problematic, which is the coming out of a Dalit, which in fact features Radhika Apte. Now, this writer, Yashica Dutt, has put out a long post on social media platforms where, as I pointed out, it's very balanced if you read it. She's gone on to say that she appreciates the storytelling that has been put out because more people need to see the struggles of Dalits, but she also feels cheated in a way or let down in a way that this was her own story, but it's not been treated anywhere as far as the makers are concerned. Let's get better context of what really has happened. I, in fact, have Yashica Dutt now joining me on the broadcast to help us understand why she put out that social media post and has she heard from anyone associated as far as the series are concerned. Yashica, thank you so much for taking out the time and speaking to us here at CNN News 18. I would have really liked it if you were speaking under better circumstances. As I pointed out when I started, that as a viewer, I was waiting for season 2. I enjoyed watching season 2, and specifically this episode featuring Radhika Apte and the story and the struggles of Dalits as far as a country like India is concerned. But then we all saw the social media posts that you put out, and there were a sense of unease in most of us as viewers. Before I talk to you about your own struggles, your book, I want to understand, as far as the making of this episode of the series were concerned, did you have any idea that something like this was in the pipeline?
Thank you so much for having me, Ritima. I had no idea. I found out much like everybody else when, in fact, differently than everybody else. A friend of mine texted me on Instagram and said, "Have you seen this episode?" And my response to her was, "Well, it's about weddings and I'm not married. So what do you mean it's based on me?" And she said, "It seems like it's based on you." And she said, "Why don't you just watch it and judge for yourself?" So I immediately went on my laptop and I, watched it. And within the first 5 minutes of the episode, it was very evident that the character of Pallavi Menke was speaking the exact lines that I've spoken in many interviews in the past, whether it's about her coming out as, she doesn't say coming out as Dalit, but her coming out in the context of being Dalit, or whether how her grandmother used to manually clean toilets. Now that makes her Bhangi. And that is a Dalit Bhangi author at Columbia who has written a book about coming out. The similarities were far too obvious for me to not notice. I mean, there were some words that were exactly what I've said, maybe with a word or two different in many interviews in the past.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to understand, Radhika. In a way, you've answered that by the end of your answer, which is that what are the kind of similarities that you saw with your own life and the character Pallavi. But I also want to talk about the post that you put out. And as I said when I started this conversation, that it was not bitter in nature. Yes, it also lauded the efforts that have been made by people like Neeraj, but it said that possibly we want to be seen as an equal, and that kind of credit should have come.
Ridhima, thank you so much for being sensitive to sort of pick on the emotions that I've been trying to convey in my posts. I am not bitter at all. I love the episode. My initial reaction on seeing my likeness on screen, as would be for anybody, was thrill and excitement. And it was exciting to see a character like that so closely resembles to me being portrayed on screen. But at the same time, when I realized and when it dawned on me actually that I'm watching this episode in the United States where my book is not released yet, and this will be seen by millions of viewers, Dalit, non-Dalit, Indian, non-Indian, non-South Asian, across the world, I realized that there is no direct link back to my work or to my ideas. There is no way that anybody else who is not a part of this conversation knows that that's me. But there are enough of us who do know that's me. Like I've been hearing from thousands of people ever since I put out my post on Monday. I'm sure you've seen the discourse. People can easily see the similarities. And I want to say there is no bitterness on that end. Neeraj has created phenomenal work. I call it a cinematic triumph in my post. And that's for a reason. It's because we've not seen a Dalit female character portrayed so brilliantly on screen before. The hesitance that she has about asserting herself in a very complete way, and the navigating of different identities, her being in New York and her family being in India, those are very sensitively portrayed. So I think there is so much value, tremendous value, that is to be gleaned from this entire episode. I think everybody, and I hope your viewers are watching this, I think everybody should see this. But at the same time, all I'm saying is, if folks can so easily recognize that's me, then credit is where credit is due. And that's all. This is not an example of, demanding for cancellation or demanding that this be taken off or anything like that. I'm appreciating this. I'm trying to say that this is a wonderful and beautiful piece of art, but can we also acknowledge people who have so clearly inspired at least one of its central ideas? That's my entire point. I saw a lot of headlines where news outlets, we understand Indian journalism in India, they've said I've slammed the makers, which is absolutely not true. How is this slamming? I am calling them in. This is not calling anybody out. That's the best I can do in my position as somebody with a voice, that I can call people in and help them understand and hopefully further this narrative to counter this trend of taking from writers, from people who create these narratives without credit. That's all I'm doing. There is no bitterness. I would love for everybody to see this episode because it's very important to see Dalit stories on screen, and especially the way Neeraj has done it.
Well, Yashica, we'll have to leave that conversation there. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. Here's hoping there will be some sort of corrective action as far as the makers are concerned. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.